Hello everyone, my name is Christian Carreras, and this is my final project for Professor Adrian Wheeler's CIS 3367 Excel class at Baruch College. For this project I decided to use Apple Inc. because I do like Apple. It's a very profitable company, and also a lot of people have iPhones or iMacs or a Mac and things like that. So I felt that it was a good company to analyze. So before we get started, let's go to their website. So on this investor.apple.com website, you can find any SEC filings, especially the 10Qs, which basically means the quarterly financial statements, and also 10Ks, the annual financial statements. If you click on the financial information, it will be easier for us to navigate through the past 4 years. Now let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet. So here what you have is a comparative income statement. And it is worthy to note that I chose a comparative income statement deliberately, so that way I can do a pretty good analysis of the changes that we can see from these reported numbers from year to year, and also from 2012 to 2016, which we have in here. So now let's go over this section briefly. The Apple financial ratios. So for the purpose of simplicity, I chose ratios that are pertinent to the income statement, just to make it easier for us to understand this project. There are many other ratios that have to do with assets and liabilities, some owners' equities, but that has to do with the balance sheet and other financial statements, which are not important for this project in particular. But to walk you through what you see here, I created a formula that would tell me what the gross profit margin would be for a specific year, the operating profit margin, also the R&D to sales, and the earnings per share. I also had to add this information. For the dividend per share, I went to the Apple website and I looked through the financial statements, and I basically added every single dividend that was issued for a specific year. And if you were to look at the dividend history of Apple, they pretty much have a good track record of paying out dividends every quarter. So I basically just added any dividend that was paid per quarter per year, and it gave me these figures. For the lowest, for the share price, I used the lowest share price. And again, I looked at the share price history of Apple Inc. And I chose the lowest share price just for simplicity's sake. And I needed to find out this information in order for me to come up with these ratios. There is a second set of information that I utilized for this project, which can also be found on the Apple investor.apple.com website. Basically, what this information gives us is the figures for the first and second quarter of this year, 2017, broken down by revenue when it comes to the 5 operating segments. Basically, the biggest markets And also it gives us the revenue for specific products such as the iPhone, iPad, Mac, services, and other products. And also it gives us the units that were sold for the iPhone, iPad, and Mac for these quarters. And also just as a way of comparing one quarter to the other on a different year. Apple also provides the 2016 second quarter revenue for the operating segments, and also revenue units for the product summary. Also, this information that we have in this in front of us is very useful with the Solver tool, especially when we start forecasting the future revenues for the third quarter 2017, which we will actually get to right now. So for our first Solver exercise, what we're basically doing here is that we're taking this information, the first half, with regards to the revenues for the operating segments for the third 2017 quarter. Now, on the second quarter quarterly financial statements, Apple provides us with some guidance, aka forecast, which is basically telling us that for this next quarter, which will end approximately on July 1st, they are anticipating to have revenues of $43.5 billion to $45.5 billion, gross margin from 37 to 38.5, operating expenses, other income expense, and tax rate of 25.5%. Pardon me. So, if we take a look in here, well, this is already computed, but to give you an example, so this is blank, and since Apple is forecasting to have revenues from anywhere to $43.5 to $45.5 billion, I decided to make the target revenue $45.5 billion to make it pretty simple for us. So if we go to the Data tab and click on Solver, here we will see that for my objective cell, I chose the target revenue. Yeah, let's have it here for now. And for the other cells, such as the operating segments, I created a constraint, and for this particular quarter, I made the constraint to be equal to or greater than the 2016 third quarter figures, especially since the projected revenue is more than the total revenue for that quarter. And let's bring this up a little bit. And when you run the solver here, solve, let's click on answer. Okay, so here you will see that we have $45.5 billion, which is exactly what we wanted to do here. Let me bring this here. Perfect. And for the figures, you can see that they all gradually increase. Yes, they all gradually increase, and I like it because it's a pretty good projection, and the numbers are not that far off from last year's figures, which means that it's totally possible to generate this new type of revenue, or differential type of revenue from these markets. Now let's move on to the second solver exercise, which we already have set up in here. And
similarly to the previous example, we would go to Solver and we would create the same constraints, but with these numbers from 2016. And when we run it, it will give us a target revenue of $45.5 billion by product. And our final Solver exercise has to do with the revenues, but more in terms of units for these products. And similarly, we delete these numbers, go to Solver. You can guess what I did here. I created the constraints to be the units numbers for the third quarter 2016. And when you run it, ta-da. Well, for this one, I chose 60,000, just a random figure. But you can see that it does work. The first two products stay the same, but the last one increased dramatically. One final thing. This report. So this is a Solver report, and it breaks down basically our changes from the objective cell original value to the final value, variable cells original value, final value, and the same for the constraints. This was a very interesting project for me because I'm not familiar with the Solver tool, and it was challenging trying to come up with the information I needed, the constraints, the objectives. Well, the objective cell was easy, but then the rest of the information, it took me quite some time to figure it out. But I'm really glad I figured it out because the numbers do make sense. They're not vastly different from one another. And that is a great thing, because when you're dealing with companies that generate billions of dollars, it's really hard to say, oh, we're going to sell $5 billion more this year. But these numbers are a lot smaller than that, and I really enjoy that.